The war between humans and the Volanthi Empire had lasted for 7 long years. Millions had died on both sides. Planets had burned. Families had been destroyed. But 3 months ago, the fighting had finally stopped. A peace treaty was signed aboard the Volanthi flagship, and both sides agreed to end the bloodshed. The peace needed to be sealed with something more than just words on paper. The Volanthi Emperor had demanded a marriage. His daughter, Princess Kavira, would marry a human military officer. This union would bind the two species together and make sure the peace would last. Princess Kavira hated the idea. She stood at the large window of her personal starship, looking out at the endless darkness of space. Stars moved slowly past as the ship traveled toward Earth Station Omega, where she would meet her future husband for the first time. Kavira was beautiful by the standards of her people. Her skin was silver blue, smooth and shining under any light. She had 4 eyes, 2 above and 2 below, all of them a deep purple color. She was tall and moved with the grace of someone who had been trained in royal manners since birth. Her long fingers held a small tablet, and on the screen was a picture of the human she was supposed to marry. His name was Daniel Reyes. He was a captain in the human fleet. The file said he was a hero. He had saved a human colony from attack. He had fought bravely in many battles. He had even helped end the war by pushing for peace talks. Kavira did not care about any of this. To her, he was just another human, a member of a species she considered to be primitive and weak. Humans live such short lives, only 80 or 90 years at most. The Volanthi could live for centuries. Humans had only discovered space travel a few hundred years ago. The Volanthi had been sailing between stars for 10,000 years, and now she was expected to marry one of them, to bind herself to this lesser being for the rest of her very long life. The door behind her slid open, and her handmaiden Desha entered. Desha was younger than Kavira, with lighter blue skin and kind eyes. She had served the princess since they were both children. "Your Highness," Desha said softly, "we will arrive at the human station in 6 hours. Would you like to rest before the ceremony?" Kavira turned away from the window. Her face was cold and hard. "Rest? You want me to rest? I am being sold like an animal to keep the peace, and you think I should sleep?" Desha lowered her head. "I am sorry, Your Highness. I only meant to help. I know." Kavira sighed and set down the tablet. "I am not angry at you, Desha. I am angry at this situation. My father treats me like a tool, something to be used and then put away. The Emperor believes this marriage will bring lasting peace," Desha said carefully. "He wants what is best for our people. He wants what is easy." Kavira walked to her wardrobe and began looking at the ceremonial robes hanging inside. The humans are useful to him now, so he gives them his daughter. If they become useless tomorrow, he will find another way to deal with them. She pulled out a robe of deep violet, the color of her royal house. Gold thread was woven into the fabric, forming patterns that told the story of her ancestors. She would wear this for the first meeting with her future husband. She would look like the princess she was, even if she felt like a prisoner. "Have you looked at his image, Your Highness?" Desha asked. "The human captain? I have seen it." Kavira fastened the robe around her shoulders. "It changes nothing. He could be the most handsome human in all their worlds, and I would still not want this marriage. He is human. That is enough for me to know I will never accept him." Far away, on Earth Station Omega, Captain Daniel Reyes was also preparing for the meeting. The station was large, a spinning wheel of metal and glass floating in orbit around a distant moon. It served as a meeting point between human and Volanthi space, a neutral ground where the two species could talk without the threat of attack. Daniel stood in the observation room, looking out at the stars. He was 34 years old, with dark hair and dark eyes. His face showed the marks of a hard life. There were lines around his eyes from years of stress and worry. Some gray had started to appear at his temples, even though he was still young. He wore his dress uniform, dark blue with gold buttons. His medals were pinned to his chest, each one representing a battle he had survived, a mission he had completed, lives he had saved. But right now, those medals felt very heavy. His sister Lucia stood beside him. She had traveled for 3 weeks from Earth just to be here for this moment. She was shorter than Daniel, with the same dark eyes and the same stubborn jaw. "You do not have to do this," Lucia said quietly. Other officers volunteered. "You could let one of them take your place." Daniel shook his head. "The treaty named me specifically. The Volanthi Council chose me because of my record. If I refuse, the peace might fall apart. And marrying an alien princess who hates your whole species? That is acceptable to you?" Daniel was quiet for a moment. "Do you remember what Mom used to tell us? She said the measure of a person is not what they do when things are easy. It is what they do when things are hard." "She was talking about helping neighbors fix their houses after storms," Lucia said. "Not marrying into an alien empire that tried to destroy us." Daniel smiled, but there was sadness in it. "The Volanthi lost just as many people as we did. Maybe more. They are not evil, Lucia. They are just different. And scared. Just like us. You really believe that?" "I have to believe it. Because if there is even a small chance that this marriage can bring real peace, I have to try." He turned to face his sister. "I am tired of fighting. I am tired of watching friends die. I am tired of being the one who has to make choices that kill people. If this can help end all of that, then yes, I will do it." Lucia pulled him into a tight hug. "You are too good for this universe, Danny. I am just a man trying to do the right thing." The station speaker system made a soft sound, and a calm voice announced that the Volanthi delegation would arrive in 30 minutes. Daniel straightened his uniform and checked his medals one more time. "How do I look?" Lucia studied him with worried eyes. "Like a man walking to his own death with his head held high." "Perfect. That is exactly how I feel." He turned back to the window and watched the stars. Somewhere out there, a Volanthi ship was coming closer. And on that ship was a princess who had already decided to hate him. Daniel did not know what would happen when they met. He did not know if she would even speak to him with respect. But he knew one thing for certain: he would try. No matter what happened, no matter how she treated him, he would try to make this work. Because the peace was worth it. Because the lives that would be saved were worth it. And maybe, just maybe, he could show her that humans were more than she thought they were. The minutes passed slowly. Daniel waited. And the ship carrying Princess Kavira grew closer with every passing second. The docking bay of Earth Station Omega had been prepared for the arrival of the Volanthi delegation. The floor had been cleaned until it shined like glass. Flags from both species hung from the ceiling. Human diplomats in their finest clothes stood on one side, while empty space waited on the other for the Volanthi guests. Ambassador Helen Crawford stood at the front of the human group. She was a woman in her 60s, with silver hair and sharp eyes that had seen many negotiations during the war. She had helped write the peace treaty herself. Now she would help make sure it worked. Daniel stood beside her, his hands clasped behind his back, to hide the fact that they were shaking slightly. He was not afraid of battle. He had faced death many times and never flinched. But this was different. This was something he had no training for. "Remember," Crawford said quietly, "the princess has made her feelings very clear. She does not want this marriage. Do not expect her to be friendly. I understand," Daniel said. "Just be calm. Be respectful. Do not give her any reason to cause problems. I will do my best." The lights above the airlock door changed from red to green. A soft hiss filled the air as the pressure between the two ships balanced out. Then the doors slid open. The Volante guards came first. They were tall and strong, dressed in armor that seemed to be made of living crystal. Their weapons were holstered, but their 4 eyes scanned the room with suspicion. Behind them came advisors and servants, all of them moving with the smooth grace of their species. And then Princess Kavira appeared. She walked as if she owned the entire station. Her violet robes flowed behind her like water, and the gold circlet on her head caught the light with every step. Her silver blue skin seemed to glow, and her 4 purple eyes looked at the assembled humans with open contempt. She was, Daniel realized, the most striking being he had ever seen. Kavira moved through the docking bay with her head held high. She had prepared herself for this moment. She would be cold. She would be distant. She would do her duty and nothing more. These humans were beneath her, and she would make sure they knew it. And then she saw him. The moment her eyes found Daniel Reyes, Kavira stopped walking. It was so sudden that Desha almost bumped into her from behind. Something was wrong. Something was very, very wrong. Kavira had a secret. A gift that ran in her bloodline, appearing only once every few generations. She could see the threads of fate, the invisible connections that bound all living beings to each other. Most of the time, these threads were thin and weak, showing passing connections that meant nothing important. But the thread she saw now was not thin or weak. It was thick as her arm. It burned with golden light so bright it almost hurt to look at. And it stretched directly from her heart to the heart of the human man standing across the docking. No, this could not be real. This had to be a mistake. She had seen many threads in her life. She had seen the bonds between family members, between lovers, between old friends. But she had never seen anything like this. This thread was stronger than any she had ever witnessed. It pulsed with a power that seemed to shake her very soul. "Your Highness?" Desha whispered. "Is everything all right?" Kavira forced herself to breathe. "Fine. Everything is fine." She made herself start walking again, but her steps were slower now. Her eyes kept moving back to the human, no matter how hard she tried to look away. He was not what she had expected. In the images she had seen, he had looked ordinary. Just another human with his plain skin and his 2 eyes and his short life. But standing here, in person, there was something about him. Something in the way he held himself. Something in his steady gaze that met her 4 eyes without fear. The golden thread pulsed between them, visible only to her. Ambassador Crawford stepped forward with a practiced smile. "Princess Kavira, on behalf of Earth and all human colonies, I welcome you to Station Omega. We are honored by your presence." "Thank you, Ambassador." Kavira's voice was cool and polite. "I trust all preparations have been made?" "They have, Your Highness." Crawford gestured toward Daniel. "Allow me to introduce Captain Daniel Reyes, your intended." Daniel stepped forward and bowed, a formal gesture that the diplomatic team had taught him. "Your Highness, I am honored to meet you." Kavira studied him. Up close, she could see the gray in his hair, the lines around his eyes. Signs of stress and hardship that humans wore on their faces like maps of their lives. He was young by human standards, but he had clearly seen much. "Captain Reyes," she said, "your reputation is known to me. You commanded the human forces at Colony 7. I did, Your Highness. You killed many of my people in that battle." The words hung in the air. The humans around them shifted nervously. Even the Volante guards tensed, but Daniel did not look away. He did not apologize or make excuses. He simply nodded. "I did, and your forces killed many of mine. But the war is over now. We are here to build something new." Kavira felt something shift inside her. She had expected him to grovel, to beg for forgiveness, to act weak and afraid. Instead, he stood before her with quiet dignity. Acknowledging the truth without shame, the golden thread between them grew brighter. "You speak plainly," she said. "That is unusual for diplomats." "I am not a diplomat, Your Highness. I am a soldier. We say what we mean." For just a moment, something almost like respect flickered in Kavira's eyes. Then she pushed it down and made her face cold again. "Desha," she said, turning to her handmaiden, "see that my quarters are prepared. I wish to rest before the evening ceremonies." "At once, Your Highness." Kavira turned to leave. But as she passed Daniel, she paused for just a second. Her voice dropped to a whisper that only he could hear. "You are not what I expected, Captain." Then she was gone, her robes flowing behind her as she swept down the corridor. Her guards and servants followed, leaving the humans standing in confused silence. Lucia appeared at Daniel's side. Her face was puzzled. "What was that about?" "I have no idea. She stared at you like she had seen a ghost." Daniel watched the princess disappear around the corner. "I noticed. Maybe she recognized you from the war? From battle recordings? Maybe. But something in his gut told him it was more than that. The way she had frozen in place, the way her eyes had widened, the way she had looked at him as if seeing something impossible. It had not been recognition or anger. It had been something else entirely. In her quarters, Kavira dismissed her servants and locked the door. Then she sank onto the edge of her bed and buried her face in her hands. The golden thread still burned in her vision, stretching through walls and floors and metal, connecting her to Daniel Reyes wherever he stood on the station. She had come here ready to hate him, ready to endure this marriage as a prison sentence, ready to spend the rest of her life cold and distant from the human she was forced to marry. But the thread changed everything. In all the stories of her ancestors who had shared this gift, a golden thread meant one thing. It meant that two souls were bound together by fate itself. It meant they were meant to find each other across all the distances of space and time. And her thread to Daniel Reyes was the brightest, strongest thread any of her ancestors had ever recorded. "Impossible," she whispered. "This is impossible." But the thread continued to pulse with golden light, warm and undeniable. She had been so sure she would hate him. Now she did not know what to feel. The ceremonial dinner that evening was held in the station's grand hall. A long table stretched from one end of the room to the other. Human diplomats sat on one side. Volanthi nobles sat on the other. At the center, facing each other, sat Daniel and Kavira. The food was a careful mix of dishes from both cultures. Human chefs had worked with Volanthi cooks to create meals that both species could eat. But neither Daniel nor Kavira had much appetite. They picked at their plates while conversation buzzed around them. Daniel kept glancing at the princess. She had changed into different robes for the dinner. These ones, a deeper shade of purple with silver thread woven through the fabric. She looked cold and distant, just as she had in the docking bay. But every now and then, he caught her looking at him. And each time, she quickly looked away. Something had changed between them. He could feel it, even if he could not name it. "Captain Reyes." The voice came from across the table, sharp and unfriendly. Daniel looked up to see a Volanthi noble staring at him. The noble was older, with darker blue skin and eyes that burned with old anger. His name, according to the briefing Daniel had received, was Lord Vareth. He was an important member of the Volanthi Council. "Lord Vareth," Daniel said politely, "I understand you led the attack on our supply lines at the Nexus 3 engagement." The table went quiet. Ambassador Crawford's hand tightened on her napkin. Lucia, seated several chairs away, looked ready to stand up. "I did," Daniel said calmly. "My son served on one of those ships." Lord Vareth's voice was like ice. "He did not survive." Daniel held the noble's gaze. "I am sorry for your loss, Lord Vareth. The war took too much from all of us." "Sorry?" Vareth's lip curled with contempt. You destroyed 6 of our ships that day. Nearly 4,000 Volanthi died because of you. That is true. Daniel's voice remained steady. And if I had not destroyed those ships, they would have brought supplies to the fleet attacking Colony 7. 12,000 human civilians lived in that colony. Families, children, people who had nothing to do with the war. My actions that day saved their lives. So human lives are worth more than Volanthi lives? No, but those were the lives I was sworn to protect. Daniel leaned forward slightly. I have never celebrated the deaths of your people, Lord Vareth. I did what I had to do, just as your commanders did what they had to do. That is what war is. And that is why this peace matters so much. So that none of us have to make those choices again. Vareth opened his mouth to respond, but before he could speak, another voice cut through the tension. Lord Vareth. Princess Kavira's tone was sharp and commanding. The captain has answered your question with honesty and dignity. I suggest you accept his response and allow us to continue our meal. Silence fell over the table. Every eye turned to Kavira, the princess who had publicly opposed this marriage. The woman who had made no secret of her contempt for humans. She was defending Daniel? Vareth's face tightened, but he bowed his head. As your highness commands. The rest of the dinner passed in awkward quiet. When it finally ended and the guests began to leave, Kavira rose from her seat and approached Daniel. Walk with me, Captain. It was not a request. Daniel glanced at his sister, who gave him a warning look, then followed the princess out of the hall. They walked through the station's corridors in silence. The walls here were made of transparent material, showing the stars outside in all their glory. Distant nebulae painted the darkness with colors of pink and blue and gold. Thank you, Daniel said finally, for what you said to Lord Vareth. I did not do it for you. Her voice was stiff. His behavior was improper at a diplomatic event. Still, I appreciated it. Kavira stopped walking and turned to face him. Her 4 eyes studied his face with an intensity that made him feel like she was looking straight into his soul. You confuse me, Captain, she said. How so? I expected to find a brute. A violent man who took pleasure in killing my people. Her jaw tightened. Instead, I find someone who speaks of protecting families, who admits to killing without pride or shame, who meets insults with calm instead of anger. You are not what I expected. Daniel considered his words carefully. I could say the same about you, Your Highness. What do you mean? I was told you hated this marriage, that you despised humans, that you would treat me as a burden at best, an enemy at worst. He held her gaze. And yet, here you are, defending me at dinner, walking with me under the stars, speaking to me as if I might actually be worth speaking to. Something flickered in Kavira's expression. For just a moment, the cold mask slipped, and he saw something vulnerable underneath. I am reconsidering certain things, she said quietly. May I ask what changed? For a long moment, she did not answer. Then she said, when I entered the docking bay, I saw something. Something I did not expect. What did you see? She looked away toward the stars. I cannot explain it. Not yet. Perhaps not ever. She took a breath. But I can tell you this, Captain. I came here expecting to hate this marriage, to endure it as a duty and nothing more. Now I am beginning to wonder if it might be something else. Daniel felt something shift in his chest. A wall he had not known he was building began to crack. I would like that, he said softly. If you are willing to try, so am I. Kavira turned back to him. For the first time since they had met, her expression was not cold or distant. It was uncertain, hopeful, maybe even a little afraid. My people live for centuries, she said. We do not form bonds lightly. When we commit to someone, It is for the rest of our very long lives. I understand. Do you? Your life is short, Captain. In 60 years, perhaps 70, you will be gone. And I will still be here, living with the choices I make today. Daniel stepped closer to her. Then let me make sure those choices are good ones. Let me show you that humans are worth more than you think. Let me prove that this marriage can be real. Kavira's 4 eyes glistened in the starlight. Why? Why do you care what I think of you? Because I have spent 7 years fighting a war that made no sense. I have watched friends die for nothing. I have killed people who were probably just as scared and confused as I was. His voice was thick with emotion. I do not want to spend the rest of my life fighting. I want to build something. Something good. Something that lasts. And I think, maybe, I could build that with you. The silence stretched between them. The stars wheeled slowly past the window's dot. Then Kavira reached out and took his hand. Her skin was cool and smooth against his, and he felt a strange warmth spread through his chest at the contact. Then let us try, Daniel Reyes, she said. Let us try to build something good. She turned and walked away, her robes flowing behind her. But she did not let go of his hand. And when she reached the door to her quarters, she paused and looked back at him. Tomorrow, she said, meet me in the botanical garden at sunrise. We have much to learn about each other. I will be there. She nodded once, then slipped through the door and was gone. Daniel stood alone in the corridor, his hand still warm from her touch. Something had changed tonight. Something important. For the first time since this whole situation had begun, he felt something other than duty. He felt hope. The days that followed were like nothing either of them had expected. Daniel and Kavira met every morning in the station's botanical garden, a large room filled with plants from both Earth and the Volanthi homeworld. Human flowers grew beside alien trees. The air smelled of 100 different scents, some familiar and some strange. They walked together through the winding paths, talking for hours at a time. At first, their conversations were careful and polite. But as the days passed, they began to open up to each other. Kavira told Daniel about her homeworld. She described great oceans of purple water that stretched to the horizon. She spoke of crystal forests that sang when the wind blew through them. She explained how her people had built their civilization over thousands of years, developing art and music and philosophy that humans had never imagined. Daniel told her about Earth. He spoke of blue skies and green mountains and rivers that flowed to the sea. He described the small town in New Mexico where he had grown up, a place of red dust and endless sunsets. He talked about his parents, who had died in the early attacks of the war, and how their deaths had driven him to join the military. They learned each other's histories, their fears, their hopes, their dreams. And somewhere in the middle of all those conversations, something began to grow between them. I have something to tell you, Kavira said one evening as they sat on a bench beneath a flowering tree. The petals were pale pink, and they fell around them like soft rain. Daniel looked at her. I am listening. She was quiet for a moment, gathering her thoughts. Then she said, I told you that I saw something when we first met. Something I could not explain. I think it is time I tried. All right. Kavira took a deep breath. I have an ability that runs in my bloodline. It appears only rarely, once every few generations. My grandmother had it, and her grandmother before her. She looked at him with all 4 of her eyes. I can see the threads of fate. Daniel blinked. Threads of fate? Imagine that every person is connected to every other person they will ever meet by invisible strings. Most of these strings are thin and faint. They show small connections that do not mean much. She paused. But some strings are thick and bright. They show bonds that matter. Family, friendship, love. And you can see these strings? Always, since I was a child. She looked down at her hands. When I walked into the docking bay and saw you for the first time, I saw a thread connecting us. The brightest, thickest thread I've ever seen in my entire life. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Then he asked, "What does that mean?" "It means that we are bound together by fate itself." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "It means that we were meant to find each other. That whatever this is between us, it is real. More real than any marriage treaty or political arrangement." Daniel reached out and took her hand. It was cool and smooth in his grip, and she did not pull away. "Is that why you stopped in the docking bay?" he asked. "Why you looked at me like you had seen a ghost?" "Yes, I was prepared to hate you, to endure this marriage as a prison. But when I saw that thread," she shook her head, "everything I thought I knew fell apart. And now?" Kavira met his eyes. There was vulnerability there, beneath all her royal pride and ancient dignity. "Now, I do not know what to think. I only know what I feel." "What do you feel?" She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "I have lived for 147 years. I have met thousands of beings from dozens of worlds, and none of them have ever made me feel what you make me feel." Daniel squeezed her hand gently. "I do not know anything about threads or fate, but I know that I have spent every day this week looking forward to seeing you. I know that when you walk into a room, everything else disappears. I know that I started this marriage because of duty, but somewhere along the way, it became about you." Kavira's 4 eyes glistened with tears. "You barely know me. Then let me know you better. Let me spend the rest of my life learning who you are." He smiled. "However long that life might be." She reached up and touched his face. Her fingers traced the lines around his eyes, the gray in his hair, all the marks of his short human life. "I was against this marriage," she said softly. "I thought humans were beneath me, that you were primitive and weak and unworthy of my attention." She shook her head slowly. "I was wrong. You have shown me what true strength looks like. Not the strength of war or power, but the strength of kindness, of patience, of love." Daniel leaned in, and she met him halfway. Their lips touched in a gentle kiss, soft and tentative. 2 worlds coming together for the first time. And in that moment, the golden thread between them blazed brighter than any star. The wedding ceremony was held 3 days later aboard the Volanthi flagship. Representatives from both species filled the great hall. Humans in their finest clothes stood beside Volanthi in their ceremonial robes. For the first time in 7 years, the 2 peoples were together in peace instead of war. Kavira wore a gown of deep violet and shimmering gold. Her silver blue skin seemed to glow in the soft light. The circlet on her head marked her as royalty, but the smile on her face marked her as something more. Something she had never expected to be happy. Daniel stood across from her in his dress uniform. His medals shone on his chest, each one a reminder of battles fought and lives lost. But today, those medals meant something new. They were not just symbols of war. They were proof that he had survived long enough to reach this moment. Ambassador Crawford spoke the human words of the ceremony. The Volanthi High Priest spoke the alien words. Vows were exchanged in 2 languages, 2 traditions, 2 cultures joining together as one. "Do you, Daniel Reyes, take Princess Kavira to be your wife?" Crawford asked. "I do." The High Priest turned to Kavira. "Does the daughter of the Emperor accept this human as her bondmate, to walk beside her through the stars for all her days?" Kavira's voice was clear and strong. "I accept him, not because of any treaty or duty, but because my heart has chosen him. Let nothing in the universe separate what we have joined today." Daniel took her hands in his. The golden thread pulsed between them, visible only to Kavira, but felt by both. "I know I will not live as long as you," Daniel said quietly, speaking words meant only for her. I know that one day I will be gone, and you will still be here. But I promise you this. Every day I have left, I will spend loving you. Every moment I have, I will make it count. I will give you enough love in my short life to last you through the centuries after I am gone. Kavira blinked back tears. Then I will carry that love with me forever. And when we meet again in the next life, or the life after that, the thread between us will lead us back to each other. They kissed, and the hall erupted in cheers. Human and Volanti voices mixed together, celebrating not just a marriage, but the hope of a new beginning. Lucia was crying in the front row. Even Lord Vareth looked moved. The war was over. The peace was sealed. And two souls that fated bound together had finally found each other. It was not the end of their story. It was just the beginning. 5 years had passed since the wedding. The colony world of New Harmony was proof of what humans and Volanti could build together. Cities rose from empty plains, mixing the crystal towers of Volanti design with the practical buildings of human engineering. Streets were filled with people from both species, walking side by side, working together, living in peace. It had not been easy. The first year had been full of challenges. Old hatreds died slowly, and there were many on both sides who did not trust the peace. Some humans still blamed the Volanti for the war. Some Volanti still looked down on humans as lesser beings. But Daniel and Kavira had worked tirelessly to bridge those gaps. They had traveled to worlds on both sides of the old border, speaking to crowds, meeting with leaders, showing by example that the two species could live together. Slowly, the walls between them had begun to fall. Now, standing on the balcony of the governor's mansion, Kavira watched the sun set over the distant mountains. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink and gold. Beautiful in a way that still surprised her after so many years. She rested her hand on her belly, where their second child was growing. The delegation from Earth has arrived. Daniel's voice came from behind her, warm and familiar. He walked up and slipped his arm around her waist. They want to discuss the expansion into the outer sectors. Another treaty. Another negotiation. Kavira leaned against him. Do you ever miss being just a soldier? Sometimes. He kissed her temple. But I would not trade this for anything. Their daughter came running out onto the balcony. Her name was Mira, and she was 4 years old. Her skin was a soft shade of silver, lighter than her mother's, but clearly not human. She had dark hair like her father, and 4 eyes that sparkled with mischief. Mama! Papa! Myra held up a piece of paper. Look what I made. Kavira knelt down to look at the drawing. It showed 2 figures standing under a golden sun. One figure was blue, the other was tan. Between them was a small shape that seemed to shimmer with both colors. It is our family, Myra said proudly. Kavira's heart swelled with love. It is beautiful, little one. I used gold for the sun because gold is special. Myra's 4 eyes were bright with childish wisdom. You always say gold is the color of love. Daniel scooped his daughter up and settled her on his hip. Where did you hear that? Mama told me about the thread. Mira pointed at the drawing. The golden thread that connects you and Mama. She said it was the brightest thread she ever saw. Kavira met Daniel's eyes over their daughter's head. The love there was still as strong as it had been on their wedding day. Maybe even stronger. It still is, she said softly. It will always be. That night, after Mira was asleep and the house was quiet, Daniel and Kavira sat together on their balcony. The stars had come out, thousands of them scattered across the dark sky like diamonds on black cloth. Do you remember when we first met? Kavira asked. How could I forget? You looked at me like I was an insect you wanted to step on. She laughed, a sound that still amazed him even after 5 years. I was horrible. You were scared. We both were. I was so certain I would hate you. She shook her head slowly. I have built up so many walls. Convinced myself that humans were beneath me. That this marriage would be a prison. Daniel took her hand. And now? Now I cannot imagine my life without you. She turned to face him, her 4 eyes bright with emotion. You taught me something, Daniel. Something I never expected to learn. What is that? That love is not about how long you live. It is about how deeply you live. You have given me more in 5 years than I experienced in the century before I met you. She squeezed his hand. When you are gone, I will miss you with every fiber of my being. But I will never regret a single moment we spent together. Daniel felt tears prick at his eyes. That is the most beautiful thing anyone has ever said to me. It is only the truth. They sat in silence for a while, watching the stars. A ship crossed the sky, carrying diplomats and traders and families seeking new lives on this world that humans and Volanthi had built together. There is something I've been meaning to tell you, Kavira said. Daniel looked at her. What is it? She took his hand and placed it on her belly, where their second child was growing. I can see the threads already, connecting this child to both of us, to Myra, to friends they have not yet met, to a future they will help build. What color are the threads? Kavira smiled. Gold, every single one of them. Daniel leaned over and kissed her. It was a gentle kiss, full of love and gratitude and hope. I was so afraid, he admitted when they broke apart. When they told me about the marriage, I thought my life was over. I thought I would be trapped with someone who hated me, living a lie for the sake of peace. And instead, I found everything I never knew I was looking for. A partner, a family, a purpose. He laughed softly. The universe has a strange sense of humor. Or perhaps it knows exactly what it is doing. Kavira leaned her head on his shoulder. The thread led me to you, Daniel. Against all my expectations, against all my fears, it led me exactly where I needed to be. Below them, the city of New Harmony glowed with lights. Human and Volanthi lights mixed together, indistinguishable from each other. Children from both species played in the parks. Families shared meals in restaurants that served food from 2 worlds. The war was a memory now, something for history books rather than daily life. All because a princess had stopped in her tracks at the sight of a human. All because 2 people had chosen to try, even when everything told them it was impossible. I love you. Daniel Reyes, Kavira whispered. I love you too, Kavira. He pulled her closer. For all the days I have left, and if the threads are real, for all the lives that come after. The stars wheeled slowly overhead, the same stars that had witnessed a war and now witnessed a peace. The same stars that had watched 2 strangers become partners, become lovers, become a family. It had started with a treaty, a political arrangement meant to seal a peace that neither side truly believed would last. But it had become something more, something real, something that would echo through the centuries. Long after Daniel was gone, long after their children had grown old, long after the last people who remembered the war had passed away, it had become love. And love, as Kavira knew now, was the strongest thread of all. The end.